All right, guys. So once again, good day, everyone. Welcome to another community meetup for this week. So we are going to be starting something exciting, and I trust that we're actually very pumped about it because it's not just for us to learn; it's for us to learn and do as we know. So we're going to be having assignments every week as we usually have, but this time around, our focus is shifting from motion to no code development using Framer. So this is our I'll be using this presentation to explain some of the points that I want to make, and then we'll just make progress from there. So what is the goal of this particular learning curve? So there are three main goals that I have for us, and this is what I want us to achieve at the end of this learning part, basically. So I want us to become proficient in the fundamentals of web design and no-code development. I want us to be able to build a simple personal portfolio website to showcase our skill and expertise. So as designers, we know that it's very good, or yeah, it's pertinent for us to have a portfolio website where we can showcase our work. And if you joined us at least in some part of this year, you should have things that you can put online. Like there are a lot of assignments that have been churning out in the last maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8 months, depending on how long you have been here. So that, and even if you have not been here for that long, I guess that you probably have worked on something before you joined, and you should have something to show online, basically. And then the last goal is for us to have some fun while doing it. So um, I think that it is interesting because I learned it also in a what? I learned it also I want to say in a short time too, but I feel like it's something that you can have for a while. It takes time, obviously, but I think that is worth it when you learn it because people actually use it to make money. So people actually use it to eat, and then people actually use it as a means of livelihood. So it's important that we take it serious. And then for today, this is what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at introduction to web design. We're going to look at how the internet works. We're going to look at Flexbox model. We're going to look at Figma versus Framer versus Webflow. Has anybody heard about Webflow before or dabbled into it or used it before? Anyone? I know when you're talking about Webflow, but has anyone used it or heard about it before?
I've heard about it, but not used at all.
Okay, all right. So we'll just look at Webflow still, and then we'll look at Framer interface, and we'll have like a simple assignment. And obviously, as we learn and as we continue, we'll take it very easy, like from easy, and then we'll start going to complex stuff. But we'll start from easy assignments, and then over time, we are going to step it up. Okay, so we are also going to pardon me. All these things that I'm saying here, I'll just say it off my head. So I'll say it off my head. I didn't really prepare like a slide in that sense because I feel like something that I feel like we understand, and it's just to you get renew our minds and then just to talk from what we actually know. So really that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I don't know if people usually take notes when they're talking, but you can revisit what we're saying and then we'll just get the meat of the matter basically. So the first one, introduction to web design or website design. I want to believe that everybody knows what a website is. Okay, but I want to believe that everybody knows. Okay, there's no way to see reactions, but let's just believe that everybody knows what a website is. But basically, a website is an online front where it's considered of different media, or let's say web pages. So a collection of web pages would result into a website. What's a web page? A web page is just a a user facing interface that has you get information made up of different layouts like images, um, text images, pattern, visual element, graphical element, branding element. So a different kind of website. For instance, let's just look at this. So this is a website. Can we see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I'm guessing that you can see this Jack Elder design. That's what I'm sharing currently. I'm guessing you can see that too.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is just a website. And there are different kinds of websites. The kind of website I'm looking at or will possibly be spending time on is probably like a portfolio website. But there are different kinds of websites. There are company websites, corporate websites, anything basically that has to do with a brand. You want to put your business, you have a business, you have a organization, you want to say something about it online. That's a website. So this is just one example, but I understand or I'm guessing that everybody knows what a website is. So I'll not really delve deep into that. And then the next one is how the internet works. So as I said, we know that a website is made up of different elements. For instance, if you, okay, sorry, let me still come here. So, for instance, if you look at everything that is going on here, it's actually like a website. And in every website is made up of two like major elements, sort of. So there is what we call like HTML, and then there's what we call like CSS. So the way to explain it is like let's take like the human system, for instance, or the human body. You mostly say that let's say HTML is like the outer you get. Can we use human body? I'm not sure human body will work. But basically what I'm trying to say is that HTML is made up of like the structure, sort of. Like for instance, if you look at this web page, it's made up of, let's say, this text. Let's assume this is a logo. Let's say see some text, some images, and other things that are going on here. Those elements are what make up like HTML. So like every individual element, like typography, color, sorry, no, just typography, like the structure basically is what you call like the HTML. While CSS is adding like styles to it. So CSS is you adding like, let's say, building like just the way we have UX and UI. You can take HTML as like the UX, like the one that people we really experience. While you can take like CSS as the UI. So CSS is just styling, cascading style sheet. Basically, what it just does is maybe next time I'll just use like a slide that explains basically. I was just using my head, but CSS is just a way to style things. So for instance, you have seen something and you say this thing is not fine, or this thing does not look like what you like, or something like that. That look or that feel or that style in that sense, that's what you call CSS. And every website is made up of HTML and CSS. HTML is just is like when you take out, how do I explain it? Okay, maybe you have a building, you're building a house, for instance. Normally, before you start building a house, you put your concrete, you put your cement, you like put everything together basically. And then that's like the first stage. Then the final stage will now be that you now begin to add like, let's say, color, you paint the house, you add AC, you add, let's say, gate. But the major stuff is actually like the building itself. So HTML is more or less like the building, like it's not the fine part in that sense. While CSS is you now building on top of HTML, and then you're having like the styles, like anything that makes a site, let's say, fine, that you can add to a site, like color, animation, that's like JavaScript. But basically, it's just adding beauty to what already exists. I don't know if that explains. I'm sorry that I should have used the slide, but I was just guessing that you. But do you understand what I'm trying to say? We can read more later, but I'm just giving like an overview, sort of. So do we understand? I know it's weird, but do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because I'm asking for feedback, so I'm not saying rubbish. I'm not speaking about it. Do you understand what I've said so far? Can you hear me? Nobody's saying anything. I can't hear anything.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. But do you understand what I've just said? It's jargon. Switch on.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. HTML, CSS. HTML is like the US, right? CSS like.
Yeah, CSS is just like adding like layering on HTML. I don't really have any image to show. Let me see if I can. Okay, but let's just keep that in mind. Maybe we'll just get to that later on. And then the next one is the Flexbox model. So, what is the Flexbox model or the Flexbox concept? The Flexbox model or concept just states that in every structure of a particular website or yes, or web interface, one of the ways to look at it, which will help you, like assuming I also a developer, is that elements are made up of box inside box. And we understand what I mean in a bit. So you can look at the entire website. So let's just look at this particular website. I took a screenshot. This is Figma. So let's take this section for instance. This is like the guy's hero section for that particular design, this one that we have here. So this is the hero section, and this is it on Figma. What the Flexbox module just says that if you want to break down any particular interface to its barest minimum, it's actually just a box inside a box. And I don't know if it makes sense, but let's just break this particular interface down. So let me just do some bit of designing here. Let me just draw let me use a rectangle so we understand. It's like a concentric circle or concentric rectangle whereby everything is like a rectangle inside that rectangle. So let's take this rectangle as let's look at though we are trying to break down this website. So this is one rectangle, which is like this background. If you look at this navigation, like this navigation element here, You can also break it down into rectangle. You can see there's a logo here, there's element here, there's element here. If you wanted to break it down into its own unique rectangle, you could have something like this. Let me turn on my, let me just add more things to it so we can see. So if we break this down, this is like the navigation. Let me give it a stroke so we can just see what I'm trying to say. Next time I would work on doing like a proper slide. I just wanted to I thought it would be easy to explain with mouth. But hopefully we can understand what I'm trying to say. Please just give me a moment. I'm trying to adjust something. Control Z, Control C, Control V. Uh, so the logo will just stay one place. And then this particular, like all the navigation here is also another rectangle. Control C, Control V, Shift Alt. So I'm using a lot of shortcuts. Don't mind me. But hopefully we can just get the point I'm trying to make. This Shift A, 2, 3, 4. Stretch. So if you look at what we actually have here, okay, we have done the navigation. If we do this other one, so let's just do this one. You see what I'm trying to say in a bit. Let's reduce this rectangle again. Let's break down this one. So I've not even entered Framer. We'll still get to Framer in a bit. And then let's take this hero section, which is like another rectangle here. Like I mean like this text part. This is another rectangle. And then this small part here is another rectangle. We are going to skip this particular banner here, but let's just put it so you just see. But that's just a rectangle. So really, this is, can we see my screen? Can we see
Yes.
my screen? So basically, this is what the Flexbox model is trying to say. How that if you are going to look at any website or any digital interface, you can break it down into a box inside that box. And to help us, because the way most of low code or no code to work is that they use this particular model. In fact, even development wise, when you get to development, people that develop, they know what Flexbox are. These are like boxes inside boxes. So even if we wanted to work on this, because we're going to work on this today, I know it's looking scary, but we'll work on it and then just see how it really comes together. But this is what the Flexbox model is trying to say, how that when you look at any particular interface or a website, you must be able to break it into its parent like boxes. Because if you can do that, then you can achieve no matter how complex the website is. You can look at this website, you can look as though it is very, very complex. But if you actually break it down, it's actually just a box and another box. That's all that is happening here. You can take this as a box, just as we have here. Like if you compare them together, this background is this box, this text is this one, this small thing here is this particular box, this one here is this box, this navigation is this box here, and then the elements, this logo is this box, this one too is inside like a box, like this stuff is a box, and then all these individual elements are boxes inside that box, and then this one is a box, and then this one is a box. I know it's looking as though it's jargon, but it will make sense when we start like working on Webflow, because that's our Webflow. And if you have, I say Webflow, sorry, that's our frame. And even Webflow is the same principle that has been applied, Flexbox model. So we'll go to Framer and then I'll just explain some things to us. But this is the way we can understand websites. And this will form like our assignment for this week, because we are going to do something like this and pick out like a website, any website, and just tear it down into boxes. Like, because if you can do that, it means that it doesn't matter how complex the interface or the layout is. If you can break it into boxes, then you can build it on Framer or any tool, even Figma itself. You can build it. Once you can break it into, oh, this is a box inside that box, and that box, and that box. Just put them inside boxes, and you'll find out that it's not actually as difficult as you think it is. So that's what the Flexbox model is. The next one is Figma versus Framer versus Webflow. Or the Webflow is just is grayed out, but is I thought to mention it because it's also an important tool. So what is Figma? Figma is a tool just like you have your, let's say, Adobe like Suite, like let's say Photoshop, XD. Figma is just a tool. And as designers, we should be tool agnostic. Like tools should just help your craft. What it means is that if you actually understand design, even this thing that is looking very complex, you can design it in any tool. Even, well, let me just say Canva. I'm not really sure about Canva, but you get my point. Like if you bring this thing inside Illustrator, you can actually do it. If you take it inside what other tools, let's say CorelDRAW, you can actually do it. Let's say Photoshop, you can actually do it. Let's say InDesign, if you know Adobe InDesign, you can actually do it. Canva, I think that you can achieve at least something like this, but maybe not exactly like this. I'm not too used to Canva, but I'm just saying that because I can use Adobe Shoot, so I know that you can do anything. In fact, any software tool that is a design tool, you can do it because most designers we know are made up of essential elements. Like for instance, what we can see here is just typography and let's say color. Sorry, typography, color, and let's say like imagery. That's all that is happening here. There's nothing really complex here. This is just text, black color, text, and then just this image as a background. That's all that is happening here. It's not really difficult. And so it's just a tool. So Figma is a tool for like user interface design. So when you want to design anything that has to do with like a user interface. I'm talking about website, mobile app, dashboard, anything that a user can interact with that is digital for digital product design. You can use Figma. And that's what Figma is like used for. Everybody knows what Figma is. It's like the hot tool now. And then there is Framer. Framer on its own, Framer is not exactly like Figma. Framer, I'm inside Framer now. Framer is not Figma. Framer is a development tool. So we know that when you design, for instance, your design is just a static web page, although you can add some interactions on it, but it's not really live. Like it's not like a live site. And when you design, the next thing you're supposed to do is to develop. So you design and then you develop. That's the normal workflow. But with Framer, Framer is like a tool that bridges development. So ideally, the workflow will be that when you design, then you give a developer, then developer will not develop. But with Framer, you exactly don't need a developer because you can both take your designs and develop it yourself without needing a developer. And then you just get your live site as though it was developed by a developer because Framer is actually developing it for you, but it's simplifying that process for you. So that's what Framer is. So Framer is not exactly like a web design tool, although it has that capability. And some people actually use Framer to do web design. But the better way to look at it, or the better way to imagine, or your better workflow will be that it is better for you to design inside of Figma and then bring it into Framer and then develop it there. So that's like the best way to do it because Framer is actually built more for development than for design. Although there are some features on Framer that actually helps you to like design in that sense, but you would really want to design inside Figma that is a design tool, or let's say any other design tool. And then when you are sure that you have gotten your design right, then you can bring it into Framer and then do your development inside Framer. And so that is Framer. What is Webflow? Webflow is also a no-code tool. It's also for development. People would use Framer or may use Webflow. It depends on preference. So I've also learned Webflow at some point, and I can use Webflow. I created some sites on Webflow. It's also similar to Framer, but the only issue I just think is that Webflow is a little bit more complex because you can do more complex stuff on Webflow. So you want to create like more complex websites, like without using code in that sense, and you want like more complex interaction, complex animation, like very complex stuff and complex integrations, then you probably want to use Webflow because it's more complex. And also the learning curve for Webflow is also a little bit steep because it's complex. While for Framer, it's a little bit easy, sort of, because, for instance, we'll go to Framer in a bit, but if you look at Framer and then we come to Figma, let me just show the interface. You see that it's a little bit very similar. Like if you look at what we are doing here, like all this part here, if you come to Framer, you can see that it's somewhat similar. You can see layers, you can see different things, assets. If you come to Figma too, you can see assets, you can see files that has your layers. Like it's very similar, sort of. So if you have used Figma before, you have some idea with Figma, Figma should be a little bit easier to use, sort of. So this is Framer. And I'm guessing that we have created like our own Framer account. And then I'm guessing that you can probably I just created like a new file basically. Or let me just go back. So let's start from the beginning. So this is Framer, and then okay, let me just delete this one. We can delete this particular one. Let's just start from the beginning. Let me see. Can I delete it? Okay, let me just open it. Okay, but basically you can just open like a random file, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. You can open a random file and then you can give it a name like similar to what, let's just call this one design dive exploration. You can give it a name, you can put it in a folder, but we'll just leave it like this. So this is just a name. I've changed the name. It's similar to the way Figma is, whereby, although this is the new Figma interface, but before you could actually change the name from somewhere in the middle here. But now they change the interface, so it's somewhere on the left and there. but basically similar to the way Framer is. And the way we are going to be learning, I feel like instead of me saying, "Oh, do this," or I'll show us around, or we're going to be learning more by doing, basically. And that's why I said that even on this call, we'll try to like create something and then we'll just see how it goes. So before I start, so far, do you understand all I've been saying? Just so far, before we go to Framer interface, I just want to get some feedback. I'm sorry that I'm not using a slide once again. Next time I'll probably try to use like some slide that shows like more information. I was just trying to explain from my head as I mentioned earlier. But basically, do we understand what I've been saying so far? I just want to get some feedback. I hope it's not too complex.
Not bad.
Okay, not bad. Aisha, Ikmat, Matthew, am I making sense? I'm saying rubbish. Hey, can you hear? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, does it make sense so far?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. All
Too
right.
much of sense is worrying you.
Hey, too much of sense. Okay. Uh, our time is also running out. So anywhere we stop, we'll just stop there. But so introduction to Framer interface. So this is the interface, and I don't want us to get overwhelmed. It's not exactly so like overwhelming like that. So we have pages. We have so pages just refers to, as I said, a website is made up of different pages. So when you open like a normal website, you see that they have, let's say, their home page, about us page, let's say pricing page, let's say contact us page. All those pages are what will be shown here. So assuming you are working on a particular project and we need, like, let's say a new page, then we can just add the page here and then let's say call it about us, and then we can design independently here, and then later on we can now link them together. But this is like the home page. We are assuming that you're working on a one-page website, so you only need like an home page. But we are working on pages on projects that, let's say, you need more than one page. Let's say home, about us, let's say testimonial, let's say contact us, like different pages. Then that's where these pages will be important. The next one is layers. So really, this one is actually like empty. What we can just see here is just this particular frame, but it's empty because there's nothing there. But when you begin to add stuff, yes, like you can see things here. Let me just draw a rectangle and some shortcut that you already know from Figma actually work here. So these are just elements. We can see that these are now calling into like layers. Like under here, you can see all the layers in this particular frame. So this is a frame. And a frame here is similar to a frame in, let's say, Figma. So this is Figma with the shortcut F, you can draw a frame. So frames are like your artboard, let's say in Photoshop. Well, artboard does really work. Yes, artboard, because this is like your Canva, like this particular thing without nothing, like this entire, everything here is your Canva. But when you want to work in different tools, then you have to draw like a frame or an artboard. Let's say in Illustrator or Photoshop, you need to draw like an artboard. So that's where frame, artboard is like frame. So that's where it comes into place. And also, when you're talking about web design, there are different frame sizes. So for instance, there's desktop frame size. And the standard, there's like a default style you want to use. And Framer here tells us that it's 1,200. But if you come to Figma, because Figma is like a, I don't know if you can see my left-hand panel, but if you can see my left-hand panel here, can we see what is here? You can see that there's a frame size for phone. And let's go to the one for desktop. So you can see desktop. You can see for MacBook is 1280, for MacBook Pro 1512, MacBook Pro 16. Like this sizes are different. But we can see that one of the defaults for desktop is 1440 by 1024. That's really like what most desktop use. But on Framer, their own default size is like 1200. But you can actually increase it to something else as you want, but they just start from 1200. So this is layers. So as you have like layers there, when you add stuff to your frame, then you can be, let's say you had text, you had another element here, you had the whatever it is. Let's say anything that you do here basically will be showing under like your layer, like panel here. And then we know from other tools that, as I said, there is one thing for you to have like the building or like the building blocks. Like for instance, this text is a building block, this rectangle is a building block. I said that when you now want to edit your building block, like you want to, let's say, paint your building, that's where CSS comes into play. So, and that's where this other panel on the right-hand side will be similar to like a CSS functionality, because what it does is that it allows you to edit your building block. So, for instance, this is text. And then if I scroll down, if I select this particular text, then if I scroll, okay, let me just make my screen very big. Sorry, let me show my I'm trying to scroll down. Okay, sorry. Let me scroll down. Okay. So if you can see here, if you now want to change this particular font, let's say one change to, let's say, Instrument Sans, this is like CSS. Now we are styling it. Or okay, let's just change it here. You want to increase the size to, let's say, 64. Anything you want to do, you can see that we can now make changes based on these elements that are here. So this is more or less the place where you style your elements. For instance, we can see different things that are happening here. This is like position. This is still on styling. So if you want to position it, we'll look at them like in more detail, but we can just see that it's similar to what you have on Figma. So Figma too, when you have a particular frame selected here, like this one that is here, okay, this is not a frame, but like an element anyways, you can see that you can now change things, the position, layout, whatever, the color, the feel, you can even add effects there. And you will have all those things inside Framer. So if assuming we write, let's say, this particular text, just the way you can change, there's a particular place to change all the elements here. Same thing with Framer too. This particular text, you can see that you can now alter the text property. You can change the font, the weight, the color, the size, everything that is here, you can actually change it. So I'll just run through the elements or the things that are happening here, basically. And then I think that we'll just call it like a wrap, basically. So in a particular frame, when you select out of the artboard, you see like all these elements. But if you want to see like the styling, you have to pick a particular element. Let's say something or a particular layer. Let's just say a layer or an element. And then when you pick a particular layer, you see like there are things that are here on this side. So we'll just run through like the things that are here, and then I think that we'll just call it a wrap. I think our time is almost over, if it's not going to be over very soon. But the first thing we can see here is alignment. So alignment is similar to any other tool. Most of the things that are here are similar to any other tool. So align to the left, to the right, to the middle, top, center, and you can see the alignment. And then this other one is distribute. So distribute will not work unless you have two things selected. And it's the way it works in all other tools. So if I select just one element, you cannot really distribute because it's one element. But when I select one element and something else, you can see that, or let's say three things, you can see that this distribute now, you cannot distribute, like this tool now became active. So that's what is happening. You have to select multiple elements to see this distribute. The next one is link. So link, as I said, there are times when you design a website and you want a particular interaction. For instance, let's say this is a navigation element. And when I click on, let me just say about us. When I click on this about us, I want us to go to a different page. Let's say we didn't have a different page, but if you have a different page, you can just add this link. So this link can link to a particular page. Okay, see, we have about us page. What that means is that if I click on it, let's say place prototype, and I click on this about us, it takes us to a new page. This is actually the about us page. It's just that it's blank. So, but that's what link does. It allows you to link to different pages or different sections within a particular page. So there are times when if you have a one-page website, and then let's say you section things into different layers or different sections, you can also use the link to go to different sections in a particular page. That's what link does. All right, guys. So let's just look at the position, like all this. We have looked at link. So let's look at position like in more detail. So there is 4 kinds of positioning. There is absolute, there's relative, there's fixed, and then there's sticky. And I'll try to explain it so that we can see how it works. And if we have used Figma before, I'll probably try to show it on Figma so you understand what we're trying to say. So the way we have looked at relative width, how that you can have a particular width that is relative to the parent element. That's the same thing with relative positioning too. How that you can say that, let me see, let me add a grid to this. Let me see if it's going to work. Okay, yeah. So I just added something too. I hope it's not complete, but let me just explain what you are trying to say. So there's relative. Relative is just saying that allow this particular element to be relative to the parent element. So relative positioning is same to relative sizing. It's just like is a fraction of the main element. Just the way we had this particular width that, okay, we said that this width should be this one here. We said that this width should be 78% of the parent box. That means that no matter how you stretch this particular box, it will always be 78%. So assuming you make the position to be relative too, it will also be like a fixed position in reference to like the parent position or to another element. That's like relative positioning. The next one is absolute. The way to understand absolute positioning is let me just show us in Figma. So normally there's what they call auto layout, and we'll be using that particular. It's called stack in Framer, but it's called auto layout in Figma. And what it just does is, for instance, you want to create, let's say, a button. So let me just create a button on Figma and just show us what I'm trying to say so we understand. So I've added like, okay, let me undo. So if you use Shift A, you had like what is called auto layout. So it's inside an auto layout. And the reason why in auto layout is for responsiveness, so that, for instance, okay, let me just give this button a particular stroke. So you see what I'm saying? Normally, the way people usually create button is that they will say, let's say they write button, and then they will now put a rectangle. Let's say a rectangle here, like this same rectangle, they'll put a rectangle, then they will select the two of them, they will align it, and then they will now group it. Oh, wow, I just closed my, I think I just closed my, can we still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I can't see my own screen. Okay, so I did a mistake. So I'll select it and then I'll do Command G, and that's a group. And then this one too is there. Okay, let me just make this one a few so that you see what. Let's give the same element so you see what I say. Let's give it a few. So you understand what I'm trying to say. And take out the stroke. So ideally, they look alike. There's really no difference if you look at it, like if I put them side by side. Maybe just the sizing, but they really look alike. But this one is not responsive, while this is responsive. And that's why it is also good for us to factor in responsiveness. So for instance, you see that if I move this particular text and let's say, okay, wait, let me make this one field container so you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so if I move this particular text, you can see that it's adjusting, like as I'm moving it, it is moving. But if you move this one by the right here, you can see that although it's looking as though it's responsive, but it's breaking, it's not actually responsive. It's just trying to box everything inside the same group, but it's not responsive. But this one is actually responsive. So this is like, it's called auto layout. And we'll see the way it works in on Framer, like as we advance. It's called stack in Framer. But this is what position it actually means. So if I put this particular, okay, I've put something else. Let me just put like, let's just make this one color black. Let's assume that is an icon. Because some buttons used to have like icon. Let me just name this color black. And then we'll put it here. So normally this thing is inside this particular box. And then they are inside a particular, let's say the particular frame, or let's say auto layout, or particular like stack. I'm just saying same language, but different things. Normally, if you make this one, the position, if you make it absolute, what it means is that this thing will be, it will not take any space inside here again. Like it will still be part of this element, but it will not take its own space. So if I click on, let's say absolute position, that's what I've just done. You notice that although this thing is here, but I can move it anywhere. But you see inside this particular, if you look at this particular frame element there, you can see button and rectangle. But this rectangle is not taking any space. So there's sometimes when you design something and you don't want to take a space in the particular element, then you can use absolute position. Just like this particular website. This thing that is here is not really taking any space. So you can actually make it an absolute position whereby it will just be in a particular position without altering any particular thing on the website. So there are cases where you design and you want to use absolute positioning. So that's where like it comes very, very handy. So that's the use case for this absolute position. This absolute positioning. The next one is fixed. So all these things, I'll try to explain it, but it will be easier when we start to design. What fixed positioning just means is that also there's sometimes when you look at a particular website and then I just don't have samples. Okay, let me use a particular sample of a website that I designed and show us what I mean. But what fixed or a sticky just mean, let me show certify webflow. So I'm trying to bring up a website that I designed. So I'll just, yes. So actually I was the one that designed this particular website and it's on Webflow that I designed it. That's why I know. So basically, if you look at this navigation, you can say that this navigation is set to sticky. What it means is that it's not moving. Like you can see that it's just stuck to a particular point. That's what sticky does. Sticky just means that in the entire like particular frame, you can actually make an element to be in a fixed position. Like it will just be sticky, like it will just be stuck to a particular place without moving. That's where sticky like comes into play. So this is just an example. We'll look at them like in more detail basically, but this is what it looks like. How that you can keep a particular thing in a particular position and other things will just be moving, but this one will be stuck to a particular place. Just the way this same stuff here, this made in Webflow, you can see that it is stuck to the particular like bottom. That's the way it's most likely like that's the way sticky like does. That's the way it works. And then let's see. The next one is okay, fixed. So fixed is similar to fixed position, how that you want it to be in a particular place, like just stay in one particular, although they are similar, but they're not exactly similar. It's similar to sticky, but it's not sticky. It's fixed position. Like you want to be stuck to a particular place. All these things will make sense when we begin to explain them like in more detail. So basically that is on position and on sizing. They are very similar, but I feel like when we begin to apply them to make more sense. The next one is layout. So in Framer and similar to Figma, there are two different like ways. As I said, looking at our box model, okay, let's just go back to this our Figma. You can see that all these things are boxes. So this is a box and this is a box, all these are box. When you get to Framer, there are two ways to look at this particular box. There are two like things that you can apply to this particular box. First of all, you can look at this box as a frame, and they have different use cases. So this is like a frame. Let's say this one is like a frame. And also you can look at them as a stack. So, okay, let me just explain what a stack is. A stack is like a frame that has auto layout applied to it. I hope it makes sense. So look at this particular button. This is like, normally you can make it a frame. So we can make it an auto layout. They will give very similar result, but they're not the same result. So let me just delete this particular one. So you can see that this one, it has auto layout applied to it. And that's why this two stuff is here. You can also make a frame. We can make this a frame, give this same color, take this button, Control C, and paste it inside here, and just align it to the middle. They look alike, but they are not the same thing. This one is just a frame. And you can notice that on this frame, I can move things about and then nothing is really happening. But this one is auto layout and it's called stack. So let's go back to Framer. So let me just show what I'm trying to say. So let's just make a button here and just write button. So normally I can move this button around because this button is inside. In fact, let's draw a frame on this button so you understand what I'm trying to say. So this button now is inside a frame. And so you can move it about. That's a frame. But we can also make another version of this. And this is also a frame. Let me just duplicate it. But this tab that has layout, once you have this thing, or you say Shift A, it's like auto layout. It's the same shortcut in Figma. So you can notice that this thing has changed a little bit because we have added a layout to it. And then this one now, it doesn't have a layout. You can see this layout there is blank. But this one here has a layout. And then under this layout now, it now has more like element. If you select this thing, it has like this particular stack. It's called the stack. But on Figma, it's called auto layout. They are somewhat similar, but they're not the same thing. In this case now, you cannot really move this thing about. Like, let's duplicate this button. You can see now that when I duplicated this button, this stack is trying to force it into a particular box. It's applying responsiveness to it. But this one now, if I duplicate this button now, I can even have 3 itself. You can see that I can move it about. But this one, you cannot really move things about because it's inside like a stack. It will make more sense when we begin to work because we can have like a frame, and this is actually like a frame, like this bigger frame here, whereby you can move things around, like just move this one around. But here now, for you to move things around will be a little bit, you need to this is where responsiveness will come into play. So for now, for us to move things around there, we can move. Okay, so now let's select this particular stack, this particular element. You see that we have more functions here. First of all, let me make this one, let me just say button B so that it's different. And this button A. So first of all, when you select a particular stack, there are effects that there are it's not really effects. There are some things that you can add to it. So we can see here that this one is called stack and grid. So stack is good where you just want to put things on top of each other. That's like a stack. But a grid is where you want to, for instance, place things side by side, or you want to apply like a column and a row. But most times you mostly be using like stack. But there are cases where you use like grid. For instance, you want to do like, let's say, a card, and you want to have like 3 rows and 3 columns. In that case, you need to use like a grid, not a stack. And also under this grid, under this stack, you can also set direction. So this is like this is like top to bottom. We can also make it left to right. And we can see that it's adjusting left to right or top to bottom, depending on what the case is. Also, let's just move to gap. Gap is like the space in between. So the space that is there by default is always 10. But for now, we can make it, let's say, like 20. This is gap. So we have adjusted at the space between elements. While there's what they call padding. Padding is like the space outside. So you can see that everything here is fixed inside. Like it doesn't have breathing space like on the border, sort of. There's no breathing space. But if we had a padding, let's say we had, let's say, 40 pixel, we can see that this thing has automatically adjusted. Like there's 40 pixel from the left, from the up, left, right, like all around basically. And you can also customize and say, okay, well, from the top, let's make it to be 20. And from the bottom, let's also make it to be 20. And then we can see that we can adjust the padding, while we can also adjust the space in between, which is the gap. So gap is like the space in between, and then padding is like the space from sideways, like all around it. And you can adjust them. Also, the alignment too, you can make it to align to the left, okay, align to the right, align to the center will not be too obvious because, okay, the spacing is somewhat is like it's very, very similar. But let's just increase the top spacing. Like space from top to bottom is much, so it may be hard to. And then let's try to align to, okay, so let's just bring this particular stack. So we can see align to the left, everything is on the left, align to the right, and then align to the middle is also on the middle. And then also what we can also do is we can also distribute. So distribute is you trying to arrange it, basically. It's like an arrangement. There's start. So it's not really obvious because we have already applied like some things here. Like, okay, let's just take it back to this. Let's make it 50. So basically, start is like saying, okay, let all these things. How do I explain it? Okay, let me just basically start is like saying let them start from the beginning, and then you now add spacing to separate it. That's what start is. So start is like you manually saying that let these things just be arranged the way they are. Then you now add your, and that's why you can see that there is gap and then there is padding. Like you can adjust it because it's on start. If you move it to center, for instance, you can also do that. But if you start to space between, or for instance, you can see space between, there is no more gap because it's, although this thing may not be really easy to understand like this, I get. I'll show them when we begin to design, but there are different ways to look at it. There's space around, there's space between, and if we have different elements, okay, let me just duplicate it and let's give it a particular, let's go back to start again and make it, let's say, okay, let's say button B, okay, let's make it the button C. Okay, and then if we need to change the color, okay, let's just leave it like this. And then if you begin to toy with that different option, you can see from start, we can change all the gap and then the padding, and we can allow it to wrap. Wrap is basically saying that when it gets to a particular, you can see that it's boxing everything inside. So it's also good to have this element, like if you are maybe dealing with like a card and you want the elements to wrap inside. But if you don't want it to wrap and let's just be going like left to right, you can see that it's just increasing. So for the spacing, it's really going to be hard to explain these distributes because there are similar elements that are here. But I believe that with time, we would also like see, you really will not see the difference because it's not so obvious. But you can space between, you can space around, you can space evenly. We'll see all this when we begin to design. So I feel like we can just stop here. We would still look at them in more detail so that we don't take too much of our time. And we can also explore like all these things. It will make more sense like when we explore it like on our own, basically, will make more sense. So really, this is just okay. There's also effects, there's overlay. We'll just keep all this one. There's cursor, and there's styling, like normal styling that we know about. You want to change the color, you want to give it a radius, you want to add a shadow, you want to give it like a border. Radius is just you want to make the, let's say, rounded edges. That's what radius is. So you can increase it, you can see that it's adjusting. You want to give it like a stroke, you can give it a stroke. You can also adjust where you give a stroke. Let's say you want it to be on the top alone, you don't want to be on the bottom. You can adjust like all the parts. You can also choose like your stroke style. So you can see the stroke style here. You can also choose the width. Let's say you want it to be You can see the element, this 10, and we can adjust the element. Let's say you want it to be 10 on top, you want it to be 20 on the bottom. Like, I can change all the 20 on the right, let's say 50 on the bottom. You can change anything you want, basically. And you can choose the type of stroke that you want to use, basically. These are just ways to style like particular elements. And you can also delete them. Like, if you don't like it, you can just cancel it and delete. And these are ways to just style like elements inside of Framer. So I think I will just stop here. I would have wanted us to actually design like a particular section, because I think that would be better to explain some of all these things. But I will just stop here so that it's not like a whole lot to undo. So yeah, this is where we'll stop for today. I want to ask if anybody has any questions. So does anybody have any questions so far before I will talk about the assignment that we're going to do this week? So please let me hear from us. Does anybody have any questions so far? I know that some things were a little bit one kind. I understand. I would have shown more example, but I don't want to like spend too much time too. But so let me just ask. Does anybody have any questions? We can talk now. Can we
Well,
get
I don't have any questions.
so do you
So,
understand?
like, yes. Well, when I explore, sure, I will know if I understand. But right now, there's a whole lot of information.
Yeah, I
But
understand. No, it's
it's
a whole lot.
nice.
It's a whole lot, I understand. Um, okay, let me ask Ikma, Matthew, do you have any questions?
No question from me.
No questions from me as well.
So that they say when there's no question, it means that the person did not teach well. um, Adeni, do you have any questions?
Not for now.
Not for now. Okay. I know that is a whole lot to handle. I was trying to show this. I wanted to explain this distribute stuff, and I don't know if it will make. Okay, let me just try and see if I can explain it. If it makes sense. But it won't make sense if we had. Okay, let me just say boy. Let me say boy. Let me just explain this and then we'll just wrap up here. I'm trying to see if I can explain it. I think I didn't really touch that. Yeah. For the spacing, it'll be easy to explain it. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can really explain this and see how we explain this center. What the center does is okay, let me just draw this stack. Okay, I think it's still, let's give it a fix to it and just draw it. I want to try and see if I can explain, and okay, yeah, it will be easier to explain like this. So let's make it start and see the way it's working. So what start does is start just takes all the elements in the stack and then puts them at the beginning. That's what stack does. So it's now for you to now adjust all the padding to make it suit what you want. And that's why you have the option to adjust the gap and the padding, because this is start. Some other options here, you can also adjust the gap and the padding, but really on start, it's just like saying all these elements now, you can see they are at the beginning. We are starting. Then if you say center, same thing. All the elements inside here is also going to be in the middle. That's what distribute center is. It's also similar to this function is also in what's it call it? It's also in Illustrator and some other tools, how that you can group different elements in different parts of a particular frame or artboard, depending on how you look at it. So you can see that center is also taking all the elements under here. So this is more or less like a let's say a parent setting. So we are setting parent, we are giving like a parent-wide setting. So all these elements here, assuming they are all parents, we are applying a particular setting that will apply to all the, let's say, children there, sort of. So there is start, put all of them at the start. There is center, put all of them at the center. And then there is end, put all of them at the end. So this is one way to look at it. There's also space between. So space between is like separating all of them to give them, to be making them to be equidistant or the same distance or the spacing. So we can see that on space between it now goes to all the children and then gives them like the same space. And that's why you can see that there is no gap again, because all the gap has been like it's automatically calculated for you. And that's why there is no way to adjust the gap, because the gap between here and here is the same thing. That is space between. So you are separating everything and you are giving them like the same space between them, like between the elements there. And then there's space around. Space around is ensuring that the space between here to here is same thing as space between here to here Let's just confirm what I'm saying is correct though. 145. Okay, 142. Oh no, that's not space around, that's space evenly. Sorry. Some of all these things too sometimes. Okay, let's see. 169. 108. Okay, okay, we have tampered with. Okay. I understand now. So space around is you giving them the same space across board. But the reason why we cannot exactly see that place because we have already tampered with the padding. And that's why the space between here and here cannot be the same between here and here because the values are somewhat different. That's why it's not going to be the same. So that's just space around. They're just trying to put everything like just give them like the same space basically. And then there is space evenly. So space evenly, you can see that it's trying to calculate. This is just it calculating, and we can see the way all of them like applies space between. You can see the way it separates all of them, like stretching out space around, brings them together, and then space evenly ensures that they are the same space, like same space across board. So this is just like a mini explanation, sort of. I hope that we understand. I know that it's a little bit complex, but really, when we begin to design, we'll get into like more detail, and then we'll be able to like break it out. So yeah, that's just summary. So let's go to the assignment for this week. So we're going to have an assignment this week, and we know the way assignments typically run. But let me just explain what the assignment is. So I want us to take out websites that we like. Let's say this is just a website, or let me just any website basically. I want us to take out any website that we like, and we can use any tool that we want to use basically. What I want us to do is I want us to break the website into Flexbox. So just the way this website I've just done now, although this one is messy, we can make it finer. This is just this is the assignment. So take a website. We can take more than one section as much as you have time, but one section is actually okay. So I don't overdo. But if you don't do more than one section, it's also okay. And what I want us to do is that take the section and break it down into its flex box. Like show us how many flex boxes that you can identify, and you can go as detailed as you want, but at least give us some good overview. So for instance, look at this particular one here. This one, I've just broken it down into different flex boxes. So you can see, okay, so let's do like this. Inside of the flex box that you do, you can also put the elements that are actually there. For instance, let's say this one is text that is there. You can just write text and then you can put it here. Let's say background is image, like this particular one on the background. You can give it a particular color, anyone that you like. And then maybe you can, black is too. Let me just do, okay, let's leave the color. Let's assume this is the color of this background. Then you can call it, let's say, image. Like anything that is happening on that particular background. Actually, this one is actually a GIF, it's not an image. If you check here, it's moving. This is not an image, it's a GIF or it's a GIF or JSON, but it's not an image. But basically, I just want us to just break down the elements of different of any website that you like and tell us what is happening there and tell us like the flex boxes that you can see because it will help us when we begin to design. So this is our assignment for this week. So we're going to take out any website that you like. I don't know, is one section enough or should we do like an entire like web, like entire page? Let me just ask our feedback. Do we want to do for just a section or the entire page? Which one? Please, let's ask, so we are deciding together.
Let's do section, then maybe subsequent.
What do you say?
I said let's do a section first, and then maybe after then we'll start exploring full page.
Okay, so let's start with the section, as I said. So basically,
Yes, sure.
okay, section. Okay, everybody doesn't want to work. Igma, do you want us to do a full
No,
page? We'll just. Igma, what do you
even
say?
when I like,
Section is fine, but I
Okay,
also
section.
think we should have like a uniform
Website.
to work on. Yeah.
No, I don't want us to have it. If you have a uniform website, it will not
Oh,
be
okay.
different because everybody will do the same thing.
Oh,
We'll not be able
yeah,
to
true.
like put our brain. So I want us to take out any website that you have looked at and pick out like the hero section. Take out the okay, do the navigation and the hero section. So let's do navigation plus hero section. I think that is easier to understand. So any website that you have, it always has navigation is this thing that is on top. Then this is hero section. So depending on what you come up with, there may be some, there are different websites. This is just one website. Some websites have like text in the middle and then different text. That's like also a flex box basically. So I want us to just break it down into flex box. And also in every of the flex box that you do, try to also, what's the word? Try to tell us the element that is inside the flex box. So as I said, this one flex box and it is text that is there. So I just put text. For this one is logo that is there. So you can just write in its own box, just write logo there. So we can know that it's logo that is, let me just use, let me just show us. just write logo there and put it there. And then let me just group put together. So just call this one logo. Sorry, that is looking weird. And then let's for these ones that you cannot exactly name, this is navigation, but maybe you can just do like an arrow. Let's say do like an arrow, and then you can call this navigation. Let's just call it navigation. Like for the parts that you cannot exactly put like a name on. For instance, this is navigation. No, this particular section, you can call it navigation. I'm just doing like navigation. Just pardon me, I'm not exactly trying to pixel perfect here. This is just navigation. And then you can call this one links. These are links, like all these things that are there. Because inside auto layout. Let me just write it here. Links. Let me just control. Sorry that I'm doing many random things here. Okay, it's not really going to work. But basically, I'm just saying that you can. Why is it not working? Let me take out the frame, the auto layout. Okay, so let's make this one a frame. Let me just show us what I'm trying to say. And then we can make this one a link. We can just call it links, basically. So all these are link 1, link 2, like that, like that, like that, like that. So we can just call it links. And then if there's a button too, some websites have button. I'm just trying to break down like different parts of the website. You can have a button, but just differentiate it. Like I know some buttons may just have like let's say different color. It might have its own feel. Yeah, you can call it, let me just change this thing to button. Button, and let's give it a white color. So this is like the assignment I'm expecting from everybody. And also, okay, so this is what we also do. So this is like the entire assignment. So links, button, like just break down any hero section. And the next thing that will also help us in the assignment is I want us to play with colors intelligently. Do you understand what I mean by playing with colors intelligently? Like I want us to use colors, but use it intelligently. Like I know that we'll have different sections. You can, and for you to play with colors you can use white, black and white, and then just try to, what's the word? Use different variation, like different tints of the color, basically, to make it fine. Do you understand what I just said? Like some parts, you can see that this one is looking a little bit messy. Like some parts that you want to play with colors, we can play with colors. That's what I'm just trying to say. But let's just be intelligent about it. Like let's just use it like you get, as though we are like a rainbow. No, like as though it's a real like design. So do you understand the assignment so far? I think that's really all. Do you understand the assignment? Can we still hear me? I can't hear anybody if you're speaking though.
Yes, we understand it. Matthew is raising his hand, so thumbs up.
Okay, all right. So I'm guessing that we understand it. So as I said, for the colors, we can play with colors too. Like the way I'm just using the random colors here, you can try to be creative about it. Like maybe use grays, use whatever, and you can pull your colors from the colors on the website too. The reason why I'm just using black is because this one is mostly like black and all, so that's why I'm using black. So when you submit both a screenshot of that section, like the way it is like this. That will be like the first page, and then your own breakdown, like your Flexbox breakdown, will be like the second page. So really, that's everything that we're going to be submitting for this week. Our deadline is Wednesday, 9 p.m. And so I think that we'll just call it a wrap here. So let me stop recording.